Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, welcome to Modern Horizons 3 spoiler breakdowns. I'm going to be talking about yesterday and today's spoilers since the releases have been coming to a snail's pace. There's only a handful of cards left. But before we go into talking about how you can apply these new cards and looking at the new arts, I want to give a shout out. Jeremiah, welcome to the Colonel's Command. You are my first member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. First up, we have Ocelot Pride. First strike, lifelink, and ascend. If you have ascended, when you gain life, you get to create a 1/1 cat creature token. If you have the city's blessing for each token you control that entered this turn, create a token that's a copy of it. You're limited to 1, and then if you make tokens some other way, you can make a ton of copies with this. It's basically like Second Harvest on a 1 mana drop creature. That's pretty awesome. Second Harvest has got less timing restrictions, while this does. But I feel like you could abuse this pretty easily, especially in a token deck. The only thing you need to do for Ascend is meet a 10 permanent requirement. And obviously, if you plan on making a bunch, you should Ascend relatively quickly.
Just Babytown frolics.
And then copy everything you put in per turn. Pretty wild 1-drop, or is this Incubator. This is, or was, a very expensive card. Yeah, okay. I guess it's been since Dominaria Remastered set, so it is still very expensive. It's a $30 card. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you get an energy, and then you can pay 6 to create a 6/12 colorless construct. You can only activate it as a sorcery. I feel like the construct is very negligible. It's that you get an energy per thing that attacks. This will let you rack them up pretty fast. I also appreciate that they stopped stacking all these symbols next to each other and just wrote the number next to the symbol. It saves on a lot of confusion and counting, and it's been a gripe that I've had on the channel for many months, and just a gripe since I've had for years, well before I even started this channel, because they first introduced energy in the Kaladesh and Aether Revolt block. That's been how long people have been like irritated by them just making a full stack of energy next to each other, and people getting a little dyslexic and not being able to count. And I would say even if you didn't have dyslexia, it was hard to make out. Conversion Apparatus, it's a 3-drop rock, can add a colorless, or you could invest 3 to tap it and make 3 energy, or you could tap it to spend 3 energy to add 3 mana of any combination of color. I imagine you'll be using the bottom ability more. This is more of a card that's for utilizing energy rather producing it, but if you had nothing else better to do, you can use this to make 3 energy, so it's got some flex to it. It's better than it looks. Overclocked Electromancer, 3-drop for a 2/2. If you combat on your turn, you may pay 3. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever it attacks, double its power till end of turn. Whenever it deals damage to a creature, if that creature was dealt excess damage, you get X energy, where X is the excess damage. It's a self-contained apparatus, and it can build itself up to get that excess damage, but it almost feels not necessary to spend that energy. You could just save it. The doubling of power is quite significant as is. It doesn't double its toughness, so people can trade with this still pretty effectively. I would just throw this in like a Voltron deck, or if you are playing energy and you have other means of making your stuff bigger, just do that and make it have some kind of protection. I like that it doesn't have evasion, because that would be counterintuitive for what you want to be doing. You want people to block it so you get the energy, so they didn't put any evasion on it. Filigree Racer, needs to be, you get 4 energy. Whenever it attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gets jumpstart till end turn. It's a fair card. I wouldn't say it's anything too special. Blaster Hulk costs 1 less for each energy you've paid or lost this turn. Has haste. Whenever it attacks, you get 2 energy. Then you may pay 8. When you do, it deals 8 damage divided as you choose among 8 targets.
Anyway, I started blasting.
There's a lot of things about this card I like. I like that it has haste, and I like that it has cost reduction. For a very powerful effect, if it's in a dedicated energy deck, I imagine you can make this 2 mana pretty consistently. The paying of 8 though, that seems a little steep, same turn. You're spending energy to reduce this, so having 8 left over to sink into this, or I guess you minimally need 6 because he produces 2 on attack. It seems a little unlikely that you'd have 12 energy just lying around. I imagine you're using it and spending it just as fast. Kind of produces this rubber band effect where you could clean up the clutter of the board pretty handedly. Aurora Shifter. Deals damage to a player, you get that many energy. Being with combat on your turn, you may pay 2. When you do, it becomes a copy of another target creature you control, except it has this ability. When this creature deals damage to a player, you get that many energy. Okay. So you're just transcribing the first paragraph onto the thing that you're copying with this. Silver Quill Lecturer. Creature spells you cast have Demonstrate. Wow. Demonstrate is a very sweet politics ability because you can choose an opponent and they get a copy of it, so you get an additional copy of something. So it basically makes your creatures into 2 instead of 1. And you can make deals with people of like, hey, if I give this to you, what will you do with it? That's how you play with this card if you want bonuses yourself and not be hindered by someone else. But if the creature is good enough and people will appreciate it, I think most people pull this ability off pretty consistently. If everyone's just like, I will not be gentle to you, and it's probably because you have a tremendous lead. That's the only time the demonstrate mechanic is not so good, is if you have everyone underneath your thumb, they're not going to just let you make it worse for them.
Who knows, you might like it.
Salvation Colossus. Flying Vigilance Trample. Whenever you attack other creatures, control get +2/+2 and indestructible till end of turn. Has Unearth to pay 8. All these energy cards are extremely expensive CMC-wise, with the exception of that blue and red creature that wants to be increased stat-wise. From what I'm seeing so far, I wonder if the deck's going to be a little clunky. Your hand's going to be stuck with cheap creatures that need additional cards, or you're going to be stuck with big chonkers that you can't get down. So you're going to have a very kind of clunky game based on what I'm seeing. Localized Destruction. You get energy, then you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, each creature you control power equal to the amount of energy, so it gets indestructible to that turn, then you destroy all creatures. You want to pick the most common denominator that is on your side of the field. If you have a lot of creatures with 3 power, you'll want to spend 3 energy so they don't get destroyed and everything else does. But this is a blanket effect. It's not one-sided. It can help your opponents out too. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. Hourglass of the Lost. Add white, put a time counter on it, remove X time counters from it, exile it, return each non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. Can only specifically return something of a specific mana value. It's a little clunky again. We've seen now 3 different variations of cards that don't make for very good gameplay. They kind of seem to be just piling it on, the terrible things. Especially in these new cards. There's only going to be 15 unique cards in each of these commander decks. So it's a little bit of a shame that a lot of these new ones aren't looking so hot. Whenever Ripper or equipped creature attacks, you get energy, and then it gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the amount of energy you have. Pay 2 or 3 energy to reconfigure. So now this is a nice payoff for stockpiling energy and not spending it. This is a nice card. Unfortunately, there are no other cards like it where you get a reward for not spending the energy. I hope in the future, as Magic progresses, we get more stuff like this, but off the top of my head, this is the only thing that cares about how much you have without actually spending it. As the battlefield tapped, enters, gets 3 energy. You could tap it for colorless, or you could tap it to spend an energy, add 1 mana of any color. It's a 2 mana rock, so I could respect that. At its worst, it only produces a colorless, and people play things like Mind Stones. And it acts like a tapped Arcane Signet for at least 3 turns. Better than most, I should say. Whenever you sack a non-token permanent, create a eldrazi spawn. That could be significant. It has to be non-token, so you're giving up a significant permanent, and if you have ways of looping stuff, then this could be a nice little combo enabler. You add things like Perforos or Impact Tremors, and you might be able to kill people with this thing. Monstrous Vortex. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, discover X for X that spell's mana value. It makes me think it's an enchantment because it says whenever. It sounds like a permanent because it's a triggered ability. Discovering X is pretty nice. Chill Gengar, Sire of Famine. 5 mana Elder Demon. Sack a creature, create a blood token. If you sacked an angel this way, create a number of blood tokens equal to its toughness instead.
When angels deserve to die.
For filtered white, black 3 times, sack 6 blood tokens, return each creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finale counter on it. Those creatures are vampires in addition to their other types. Well, because you'll definitely be telegraphing your game plan. The better payoff is sacking angels. So if you're playing a bunch of angels, you could be doing things like Buried Alive, where you're just dumping big scary stuff into your graveyard. You can sack the 6 blood tokens at instant speed, so you just sack all of those on the turn right before yours, and then you get like pseudo haste. Not bad. Okay, this is a little bit better than I thought. I like free sack outlets. The very minimum that's useful. You probably won't be using that bottom ability until you plan on winning the game, but for 6/6 value for 5 and flying, probably stuffs out a lot of aggro, or you lets you dish out a bunch. Dreamtide Whale has vanishing 2, and shall feel the 2 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it. Whenever a player casts their second spell this turn, proliferate. I like the design on this card a lot, actually, so you could proliferate the time counters on this thing. That way you never lose it. People casting 2 spells a turn, that's very common in Commander. Usually when you determine the winner of a game of Magic, it's who can see the most cards and play the most cards. You could probably keep this indefinitely with that bottom triggered ability. And it's a scary stat block. It's a 7/5. In a 60 card format, this is also pretty scary. The other beauty in this is it makes your opponents want to cast less, and it hinders and slows their game down, which is why I like this a lot. I think it's better than it looks. Hydroelectric Specimen. Flash, and on ETB you get to change the target of an instant or sorcery spell with a single target to itself, or you play it on its land side, which is the untap Bolt Yourself clause. Whatever one you want to do. It's a 3 mana protection spell. Not the best, but not the worst. Has some flexibility in that it could be a land. Ugin's Binding. It's a blue instant. The full art looks pretty sick. For 3 mana, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile Ugin's Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control. What? Oh, this is gonna be a really expensive instant. It's one-sided, so it's like Cyclonic Rift. It might be a little bit of a niche card, I guess, but in the decks that want it, it'll be super strong. Like if you're playing the 5-color eldrazi deck, I think you'll want this for sure. I like that it does something in the early and in the late game. It kind of makes me think of red card that kind of did the same thing, where it did 2 damage to everything in play, cast something 7 more, and then you did more damage to the whole board. You just swap out the words with stuff that's normally written on Cyclonic Rift, and we have Ugin's Binding instead. Cool mythic. Lion Umbra gives enchanted creature +3/+3 vigilance and reach, and if you don't know what the Umbra armor mechanic is if the enchanted creature would die, you remove the damage and destroy this aura instead. It's a nice protection spell that also doubles as a Voltron piece. Reiterating Bolt's nice. For 2 mana, you get to do 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you pay 3 energy, you get to replicate it, which is you make a copy of this, and you could replicate something as many times as you want as long as you meet the requirements to pay it. Not a bad target removal spell if you have a lot of energy lying around. Planar Genesis. This is kind of an interesting card advantage piece. You look at the top 4, and if you find a land, you get to put it in play tapped. If not, you get to put a card in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Most of these effects traditionally were putting lands from your hand into play and drawing the card. This instead gives you some selection. Who knows, maybe the land is not the best option and you just need more gas. You can choose that instead. Pretty flexible card. It's an instant, so I think this could see play. This is more of a modern card. Springheart Nantuko. I think enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and whenever a land enters, you may pay 2. If it's attached to a creature, you get to create a token copy of that creature. If you didn't create a token copy this way, you make a 1/1 insect instead. Acts like a watered-down version of Scoot Swarm. Party Thrasher. Non-creature spells cast from exile have Convoke. If you know what Convoke is, you could tap a creature to reduce the cost by 1. If the creature had a color with it, you could pay for that. So like say it was a red spell on the stack and you tapped a red creature, you add a red pip towards the spell. If you have your pre-combat main phase, you may discard a card. If you do, exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them. May play that card this turn. Vexing Bauble. Whenever a player casts a spell with no mana was spent to cast it, you get to counter it. Or you could sack it to draw a card for 1 mana. I like this a lot. This happens all the time, people not paying mana for their spells. And I play things like Boromir, and people walk into that all the time. And then the moment someone goes to blow it up, you can just sack it to draw a card, which feels good for you. This is another one of the MDFC lands that can come on and tap. Can exile target graveyard. Not bad. It's a cool little value goblin. Amphibian Downpour has Flash and Storm. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue frog with base power and toughness of 1/1. Excellent. If you like neutering effects, I personally do. I like this even more because you could make copies of it. Storm is an ability where it takes into account how many spells that were cast that turn, that include your opponents as well. So if people have been interacting with you on your turn, they're helping you get your storm count higher, and you make multiple copies of this. Probably make multiple enemies off of one card. If you don't know why these effects are particularly good, in Commander, decks that rely on their commander being in play will not function when they have these kind of effects thrown on their commander. The downside about this, though, is if you hinder too many players, they'll cohort with each other and make deals, and they'll attack into each other so they can get their commanders back. So unfortunately, I think it'd be more beneficial to just hate someone's creatures on a single person's board, because then no one's going to want to help that person.
Piss down my back and tell me it's raining.
You get more of what you want out of the deal. Ripples of Undeath. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, mill 3. Then you may pay 1 mana and 3 life. If you do, put a card from among those cards into your hand. It's cool card selection. A little steep at 3 life. If you play this early, you don't really care so much. And if you're in a life gain deck, it's not bad. It's a very cheap enchantment too. If you read the text, it looks confusing, but if you look up here, you could actually see the 1 symbol like a pip, and then the 3 over here. So that's how I know it's how the pre-combat main phase cost is. And like most of these card advantage enchantments in black, you unfortunately have to wait a full revolution of the table to get a trigger off, because it happens at the beginning. Once you cast this on your main phase, the beginning has already passed. I'm not a big fan of these kinds of things, but maybe with the card selection, it might be worth it. Invert Polarity. Choose target spell, then flip a coin. If you win the flip, can control that spell, and you choose new targets. If you lose the flip, counter spell. No matter what, it's a win-win. I like this a lot. I've been working on a Lila deck, and this would be something I want for sure. The white utility land is a little spendy for what it does. You look at the top 5, and you can, if you reveal historic, you get to put in your hand. But between tapping this and 4 mana, that's a 5 mana production investment, and that's all you get. Not that great, especially when compared to the other ones we've seen. Ethereum Pteramander. This seems like a nice card for Modern or 60 card formats in general. It has Adapt 4, and it costs less for each other artifact you control. You could get this reduced a lot and have a 5/5 flyer in play with very little investment. Aether Revolt. As long as the permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, if a source you control would deal damage, non-combat damage, to an opponent or permanent, deals that much damage +2. Whenever you get 1 more energy, Aether Revolt deals that much damage to any target. Oh. It just combos with itself. As long as you make it permanent, leave the battlefield before you get the energy, you get to shoot people with this. That's pretty fun. Minimally, you're doing at least 3 damage with this if you're just making a single energy, but if you're making more, you obviously take that into account and add 2 to it, and you have a pretty effective plinker.
Looks like we're all far away. We're not taking it straight at you.
Crew of the Guardian reprint. This is solid, very popular card. It's over $20. Very much needed. I missed this from last Thursday. Cranial Ram. It's basically cranial plating. Equipped creature gets +X/+O, where X is the number of artifacts you control. The cool part about this, though, is it comes into play already attached to a germ. So it's going to be a threatening body right out the gate. There's been a lot of buzz around this card, and that it's a common, so it could be played in Pauper. And cranial plating's banned in Pauper. It was pre-banned before the format even started. A lot of people suspect that this will get the same treatment. Path of Annihilation has Devoid on each of you make 2 eldrazi, and then Eldrazi's have tap to add 1 mana of any color. That's kind of nice because you get to circumvent. Normally the Eldrazi's, you have to sack them to produce a colorless. This lets you keep them around and use them for longer by giving them a tap ability. And then whenever you cast a spell of something 7 or greater, CMC wise, you gain 4 life. Harkening back to what I've been saying about colorless decks is they struggle to make a comeback, because they're going to be spending a lot of their early game just setting up, and then they're going to be looking for their payoffs, and this will be a nice bridge for those decks, because people are going to be beating on you, and you need a way to stay in the game. Pretty good at doing that. Marionette Apprentice has Fabricate 1. Whenever another creature or artifact control is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. That's really good. This is the first time we've ever gotten a aristocrat like this. Most aristocrats, they care about one or the other, but not both. For a 2-mana investment, that's a really sweet deal. You probably can drain a lot of life with this thing. Firemaster's Vault is the black utility land. Target creature you control connives X or X number of creatures that died this turn. If you're playing a combo deck where you're looping creatures, that's really powerful. If you're following up a board wipe, this is really powerful. It can be activated at any speed too. Also, a little bit concerning is you need a legal target post board wipe. So you could play like a god that's indestructible of some kind, and hopefully it retains its creature status post board wipe. Then this would be pretty sick. Can make a very threatening body in play. That brings us to the end of today and yesterday's spoilers. I hope you all enjoyed. I do plenty of other stuff on the channel. Anything Commander related. I do a lot of gameplay. I build budget decks for people. I obviously cover spoilers. If you enjoyed, I'm going to be covering the remainder of them. The last day that I'll be talking about them is Friday. They'll be officially wrapped up by then. Everyone take care now. Bye.
Thank you.